And that's right. Here we go. It is orange and blue today, and Justin Fields' domino needs to fall, Mace, before any of this other quarterback stuff happens. And we're getting word that maybe next week at the scouting combine, a Justin Fields decision will be made.
Yep, it's one of those things where the Bears do hold plenty of cards, but Chicago is also going to get the final pieces of information that they need regarding this year's draft class to make a decision one way or another as to whether to stick with Justin Fields or move on. And getting those final pieces of the puzzle will likely be what spurs action. And teams interested in Justin Fields want to know, hey, can we get him before we go forth with any other plan? It also tells you something that Russell Wilson may be a backup plan for a team that tries and fails to get Justin Fields. So think about that for a moment. Russell Wilson, a couple of Super Bowls, one Super Bowl win, effectively a backup plan to a quarterback who has shown a lot of promise, but it hasn't materialized into actual high-level production just yet.
I don't want to steer the show into the ground, Mace, although I may do that sometimes. But I'll assume you're like me, and you can't stand when people don't read your article. Because I wrote at Mile High Monday at denversports.com, I wrote about how the Steelers could kind of mess with the Broncos' plans because of the Justin Fields thing. And now if the Bears get rid of Fields, then they're taking Caleb, then other teams will probably take Drake May and Jane Daniels. Like, there's this domino effect. And someone on Twitter, the most important thing ever, was like, they don't want him. I'm like, okay, yes, I understand the Broncos may not want Justin Fields, but that Fields domino, perhaps the first and most important domino for the Russell Wilson effect, for the Caleb Williams. Is he, is Chicago taking him? Or are they moving back to 2? Are they moving back to 12? Like, all of this happens based on what the Bears decide happens with Justin Fields.
Yeah, and there's a couple of scenarios that can work for the Broncos. One is if the Bears decide, okay, we are not going to take a quarterback. We're going to stick with Justin Fields. We are open for business. Now, this will cost the Broncos an awful lot in terms of draft capital and player capital if they want to move up, but it does make it possible for the Broncos to try and put together an offer for somebody of whom Sean Payton has already spoken highly on the record when he was broadcasting for Fox in 2022. Now, the other thing is the Bears say, okay, we're going to pick Caleb Williams, we're trading Justin Fields. And then it becomes a matter of, okay, where does he go? Because I would argue this. You would rather see Justin Fields in Atlanta than Pittsburgh. You'd rather see him in Atlanta because the Falcons are sitting there with the number 8 overall pick. If they trade for Justin Fields, that almost certainly takes them out of the round 1 quarterback derby. So you take another team out of the mix if you've decided to stand pat or maybe move up a few picks, but not too many, and see if you can get J.J. McCarthy. Atlanta getting Fields helps that happen. If Fields goes to Pittsburgh, Atlanta very much in the round 1 quarterback discussion at pick number 8. And we did see a mock draft from Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Network, their primary draft analyst, that had J.J. McCarthy going to the Atlanta Falcons and the Broncos taking an edge rusher, Jared Verse, out of Florida State at 12.
Yeah, so a lot of this quarterback conversation is going to rely on what happens and then the reaction of other teams and where that happens. Pittsburgh with Fields or Pittsburgh with Russell Wilson. A conversation that people have been having for some time. I think maybe the Fields-Pittsburgh thing was sparked by the rumblings that Mike Tomlin really likes Justin Fields and the price that you might get Justin Fields for. Like, Russell Wilson is not being traded, most likely. Mace, anything can happen. But they likely are going to cut him. Some team could likely pick him up. But as you mentioned, Russell Wilson isn't the plan A. He's like, okay, we didn't get Fields, or it's too costly to move up for Jaden Daniels. Let's examine Russell Wilson. That's what that conversation becomes. But again, first, these other dominoes need to fall.
Wouldn't be the first time that Russell Wilson wasn't plan A. Plan A 2 years ago for the Broncos was A as in Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. Aaron.
All right.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson was plan B.
Yep.
So The Broncos have gone from there is no plan B to then following up on that plan B, but that plan B still cost them an A-level price, as so often comes up when we're talking about the draft capital deficit from which the Broncos are still suffering, right? Man.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that could give you pause before you make a trade up for Caleb Williams if the Bears are open for business from trading out the number 1 pick, because of how much it would require you surrendering in draft capital, and how do you build a team in that instance.
Yeah. Now you've got some audio. Let's set this thing up, Mace, because it's Chad Johnson or Ochocinco, whatever he goes by now. Was it Club Shay Shay Reaction Podcast? I know him and Shannon Sharp do like a reaction to Club Shay Shay, but I don't think it was Club Shay Shay. I don't know. Where's Cat Williams? Like, either way.
It's called Nightcap. It's
Nightcap.
called Nightcap.
You're right. You're right. Yes.
It's in the podcast sphere. It's also out there on YouTube as well.
Mhm.
And this was something from their show last night. And I'd say take it with a grain of salt, but it's worth filing away. Let's roll that beautiful bean footage.
We got to work on the Steelers now. If a little birdie told me, I'm a little birdie told me, and I said this many shows ago, if Russell Wilson coming on over there to the Steelers, Cleveland had Deshaun, well, the AFC gonna be hell. The AFC gonna be hell.
I think right now I saw on DraftKings the betting favorite is Justin Fields to end up in Pittsburgh.
No, he's going to Atlanta. I told you.
I thought he would be back a big 2.0.
Oh God!
The script.
There he goes with the script talk. Please, Chad, don't fan that flame for the love of God. But you see the betting favorite. Okay, betting favorites are put in place so that people will spend money. That's why they're put there. Fields is from the Atlanta area. It's always made a bunch of sense. There's no inside information there. It's just like, hey, do you want to go home and play for a Falcons team? That would be very interesting with Fields at quarterback.
Very interesting also, especially considering what the Falcons are doing schematically, because Raheem Morris coming over as head coach, having worked under Sean McVay with the Los Angeles Rams the last couple of years. In Atlanta before that, interim head coach, but prior to that was on the Falcons staff on both the defensive and the offensive side, which is where he made the connection, of course, with Kyle Shanahan, who was then the Falcons offensive coordinator. So you bring in Zach Robinson, who also comes from the Rams. This is Shanahan McVay that they're going to run. Justin Fields has not run anything quite like this. It would be a significant transition for him. Now, granted, I'm sure they would play to his strengths. You can tweak that scheme for a quarterback who is less accurate, more dynamic as a runner. It can be done. But it's very interesting to look at the Falcons, and it is fair to ask, does Justin Fields' strengths as a quarterback match up with what Raheem Morris and Zach Robinson want to do? Now, the flip side of that is, if they were in the Russell Wilson conversation, we know that Wilson has run an offense analogous to this in Seattle, so that would be less of a transition for him. Justin Fields, though, probably does have the higher ceiling. And again, if they work with him and they tweak it and massage it to his strengths, you could have something special. I mean, I think it would be smoother for the Falcons to look to a quarterback like a Russell Wilson, or maybe get into the Kirk Cousins conversation as well if the Vikings don't bring back Cousins. And that's another domino we have to talk about as well.
Right.
But Fields may have a higher long-term ceiling as well. So this is what, it's very interesting to note this. Fields is favored to go to Atlanta. And to bring Pittsburgh into it, if Chad Johnson's little birdies are saying Russell Wilson to Pittsburgh, we saw a report a couple of days ago that maybe Mike Tomlin, the head coach there, is fine with Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph. I find that a little bit far-fetched that he's fine with just those two coming
Right.
back for next year.
Right. Yeah, I don't see that happening. And if you're the Steelers, you want to spin your wheels, then keep Kenny Pickett. And because you mentioned Zach Robinson, I'm contractually obligated to say Chatfield Chargers, baby. Because, of course, he was Chatfield and Colorado's finest. And he was my son's quarterback coach in high school. So I love Zach. I think he's a future head coach and kind of jealous of Atlanta. You go from a runner like Michael Vick to a runner like Justin Fields. That'd be pretty cool. But then does Russell Wilson make more sense?
You had a league MVP in between there, dude.
Matt Ryan?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about from a running standpoint.
Okay.
From a running standpoint, you get kind of the next Michael Vick, honestly, even though I think he's perhaps a little bit stronger in terms of like lower body weight than what you see from Michael Vick back in the day. So I was talking running standpoint, not like Matt Ryan passing type stuff.
Because I was kind of like, they went from, I'm like, no, they didn't.
Well, if you want to see Russell Wilson play good football, if we'll bring up Matt Ryan and we'll go back to, Julio Jones and all that, you've got Drake London, you've got Kyle Pitts, you've got Bijan Robinson, you've got Tyler Algier. So, if you're one of the camp that says Russ just has a raw deal and Russ, they didn't have anything around Russ. If Russ goes to Atlanta, the excuses are over. They've got everything in Atlanta.
Yeah, but you're having the tight end conversation again, the question of whether Russell Wilson can maximize a good tight end, right?
Right.
And
so we'll see.
Of course, then again, the Falcons, they haven't maximized Kyle Pitts. I mean, now granted, last year they were cycling through Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke, right? Boy, what if Taylor Heineke's a Bronco?
Well, there's an opportunity there. I mean, if we talk about bridge quarterbacks, and again, just yet another domino to fall because free agency is going to start. And if you're a Broncos fan, you're not even going to notice because they're not going to do anything in free agency. They did all that last year. So what are we talking? Third wave of free agency to pick somebody up? And Mace, as we kind of tie a bow on today's program, we know that the franchise tag window has opened and there's conversations around Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley and all these sorts of things. In Denver, the conversation about franchise tag shouldn't even really be a conversation.
Right, because there's only one real candidate based on their play and the contracts that are expiring, and that, of course, is center Lloyd Cushenberry. But the Broncos are sitting there roughly $20 million over the projected cap, although maybe it won't be as much. Maybe it could end up being about 13 to 15 million over, depending on where the cap aligns. But here's the thing to consider, though. With Lloyd Cushenberry, a year from now, you're going to have to pay Quinn Miners, and we know they want him back. So there's only so much money that can go around to any position group. You've already paid Ben Powers on the interior offensive line. And, oh, by the way, the projected salary cap figure, it's done by offensive line. They don't break it down tackle, guard, center. It's offensive line that the franchise tag valuation is. The projected tag value is a little under $20 million.
Woo.
Respectfully, you're not paying that much money for a center. The notion of Lloyd Cushenberry getting a franchise tag is pretty much DOA.
Yeah, pretty much done. So we're moving on. I'll go back to the combine again, Mace, before we wrap up today. I believe we're going to hear quite a bit of movement. Maybe won't be officially official. It's kind of the way the combine goes sometimes, but it's like there may be a slower time here on a holiday week with President's Day or whatever, but it's like, I think next week, not only we're going to be extremely busy in Indianapolis, I believe that decisions on Justin Fields, maybe even on Russell Wilson, will be made, hinted at, rumored, what have you.
I believe so as well. And I believe it may not be completely done before everybody gets there, but what happens is, agents start circulating, you have a lot of conversations. Some of those conversations happen in the wee small hours of the night. Places that stay open deep into the night, you're making the motion, right? Sometimes they happen there. Sometimes they happen at the hot spot. Sometimes they happen at a place that's a little out of the way, like
Low Millers.
Low Millers.
We got to do a show from there next week, dude. I was going to suggest it to you. This is an off-air conversation, but I was like, we need to go to that tiny bar, find a napkin, and be like, this could have been stacked next to that napkin. with the Russell Wilson deal.
You know, it's funny to think that Low Millers, if the trade had worked out, Low Millers would have been a hallowed spot in Broncos history.
Right. Now it's like the cave on Dagobah. We need to go. What's in
Remember
there?
your failure in the cave.
Oh, what's in there? Only what you take with you.
Your weapons. You will not need them. He puts his weapons on anyway.
Yeah, so we'll at least do a little bit of a short. We'll do something from Low Millers next week. We're gonna be right there, so we might as well, right?
Yeah. That napkin apparently still exists somewhere. Really? Yeah. I think, I don't know, maybe it'll get destroyed at some point. One of it won't ever be public because, like, you go back and forth, right? And, the terms that were put down at Low Millers were not exactly the ones that ended up coming to pass. But the general framework did go down there. Like, so if Russell Wilson had worked out and solved the Broncos quarterbacking issues for several years, that would have been a spot where when Broncos fans were in Indianapolis would be like, hey, here's where the trade went down. And now they're
taking selfies.
Yeah. Now it's like, oh yeah, let's forget about this place ever happening. Right.
Yes.
What happens in Indianapolis decidedly does not stay in Indianapolis.
No, not at all. Lots of stuff ready to go down, but we still got plenty this week to talk about. Thanks everyone for watching our President Day special. We had Chad Ryder on. We're going to be discussing Spencer Rattler this week. We will be discussing the linebacker situation of Josey, Jewell, all that. So, like, plenty to get to. As always, it's denversports.com as well. Mace, send us out here with the YouTube stuff.
All right. You know the drill. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Hit that notification bell so that you never miss a vid.
We got it.
You always want to know when we're rolling with Orange and Blue today. You always want to know the latest shows. The best way to find that out is to subscribe to us on YouTube. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have some OBT2s next week. You will not want to miss what we bring to you on this channel. So we appreciate you all for that. Appreciate our guy Joey. He's the man of the box. I'm Cecil. He's Mace. OBT is BFD. Until next time, we bid you adieu. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty.